Tani, shall we start?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thanks, Kavisha. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I warmly welcome you all to this webinar series, Start Your Own Practice. If I recall, the objective of organizing this kind of a webinar series, this is to assist our members, especially our practicing chartered accountants, to enhance their services, as well as from the Institute of Chartered Accountants, as well as from the Members Relations Committee, wanted to give kind of an assistance or as a support to the chartered accountants who would like to start their own practices. With that objective, up to now, we have organized 12 webinars covering most of the business areas that a chartered accountant can start, maybe from valuations, from the internal auditing, audit, taxation, covering all the aspects. Right, today what we are going to discuss is, this is our 13th session. As a practitioner, what is the legal background? As well as if we neglect our professional obligations, what kind of legal background or what kind of consequences that we are going to face. That's the area we are going to discuss today. For that, we have a presenter, as well as the presenter of our session is Ms. Dinusha Rajapaksha. She's also a chartered accountant, as well as she's a lawyer. She do have her degree from the University of Colombo, LLB, as well as she's an attorney at law. Currently, she's practicing taxation at BDO Partners. She's an associate director at BDO Partners, especially focusing on advisory services relating to the tax. Before moving to the session, I will give kind of a insight to the format. Dinusha will run through our presentation today, the legal perspective of practitioner and the professional negligence. After that, we will have kind of a short Q&A session. Therefore, if you have any questions, you can post it through the Zoom Q&A option, where we will try to get as much as possible questions that you are sending to us in the Q&A session. With that, without taking that much of time, I would like to give the floor to Dinusha. I'm happy to moderate your session because we have worked together at BDO Partners and I was attached to BDO Partners. I'm happy to moderate this session. It's over to you, Dinusha, to do a good session.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nishani, for that lovely introduction. And thank you to the Institute and the Member Relations for inviting me to do this panel. I'll just like to start with maybe just ask a simple question from the audience. Now, when you're traveling on the road, when you're driving and the policeman asks you to stop, he basically just puts his hand up and then he'll just ask you, and then you know that you're supposed to stop. So just a policeman on the road puts his hand up and you stop. The same policeman on a normal day in his normal casual clothes does the same thing. He puts his hand up on the road. Nobody will even bother to look at him. So why is it that all of us, when a man who is in a uniform, which we recognize as a police uniform, puts his hand up, we are ready to stop? Whereas the same person without the uniform, and we wouldn't even bother. Okay, so why we do that is because the Constitution of our country recognizes that the policeman is the authority that is there in our country to enforce the law. So because of the Constitution that is in our country, it gives the power to the policeman to put his hand up, and it obliges us as citizens to respect that. So my point is that the law of the country is the reason why we respect the policeman when he puts his hand up. So my presentation for today will be why the community or the society has to respect a chartered accountant. if we tell something in our capacity as a chartered accountant, why should people believe in what we say or give any importance to the reports that we sign off as chartered accountants? What gives that authority for us as chartered accountants to do these activities? And also, why does the public respect the work we do as something of importance? So, of course, Nishani has given an introduction. So I'll just move on directly to my presentation. So we will see what the law tells us about who is a chartered accountant and what do we do as chartered accountants. So the authority that we have as chartered accountants is derived from the statute, Institute of Chartered Accountants Act number 23 of 1959. So because we have this piece of legislation in our statute books, we can call ourselves chartered accountants, and the public recognizes that we are people of authority, that whatever we say as chartered accountants in certain areas, of course, has the authority, and we are allowed to practice as chartered accountants and do our work. Now, if you look at the act itself, this particular legislation I just mentioned, section 6 subsection 5 says, every member of the institute shall be entitled to make and use, take and use the title chartered accountant. So that is why we call ourselves chartered accountants, and that is why we can actually claim respect or demand respect for our profession, because the statute says that we are recognized as chartered accountants. The statute also says that every member of the institute shall be an associate member and shall have the right to use the addition of ACA after his name to indicate that he is an associate member. Now, all of you know that even when I projected my name, I will use ACA behind my name. Why? Because I happen to be an associate member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants. And each of you who are qualified has the right to use these credentials behind your name, not because we like the letters ACA, but because the statute in section 6 tells us that if you are a chartered accountant, you can use these 3 letters. So it's not just 3 letters, it's something that has statutory validity. And not just ACA, even the Act also mentions FCA. So the section that refers to FCA requires a certain amount of experience to be acquired by a member in order for them to be called an FCA. So likewise, us using these letters are also backed by statutory powers. So, I mean, as members, we wouldn't have given much importance in our day-to-day activities as to why we are using these letters or why we call ourselves chartered accountants. But the Act is the one that says that we have the right to do this. And when someone of the public sees these letters, they appreciate that this stands for a chartered accountant. Now, if you look at the Act that I just mentioned, we need to see what are the objects of the Institute of Chartered Accountants. So all of us are associate members, and some of you may be fellow members. So all of us are part of a body of persons called the Institute of Chartered Accountants. And the purpose of this institute is to promote, in general, the theory and practice of accountancy, and in particular, auditing, financial management, and taxation. So our profession is basically built on the 3 pillars of auditing, financial management, and taxation. So like I said, because we are chartered accountants, if we give an opinion or if we give an advice on these 3 aspects, the statute says, or statute recognizes, that we are qualified to do that, or we have the necessary skills and knowledge to provide these services in these aspects. So like I said, I mean, if I as a chartered accountant go and raise my hand on the road, nobody's going to stop because that's not my line of expertise. But if I as a chartered accountant sign an audit report, then yes, the public will respect that. Then of course, the institute is also empowered to enroll, educate and train members who are desirous of being a chartered accountant. And of course, the institute has the obligation to make sure that as a body of professionals, we ensure that whoever we admit into our membership are sufficiently skilled and has the necessary knowledge. Now, why this is important as chartered accountants is because when we are part of a professional body, whatever we do in our personal capacity has an impact on the entire population. So if I as a chartered accountant is known for say misrepresentation or professional misconduct, then it has a bad reputation for the entire profession. Now how this works is if say for example I provide a wrong opinion, then the public will view my action as being done by a group of people. Why? Because we all belong to a group of people. So therefore, when admitting members into our membership, it's important that we provide them with the necessary skills and knowledge, because what each of us do as members, once we get the membership, has an impact on the rest of the members. So that is why, I mean, if you are starting your own practice and if you're having your own audit firms, it's important that you also consider the training aspect of the juniors to be also part of your professional obligation as part of the institute, because that's also something that we require in order for our profession to survive and also be accepted, and also for the public to respect our profession. So then also another object of the institute is to maintain professional independence of accountants and to ensure the maintenance of high standards of professional work by its members. So here again, we have our code of ethics. We have, of course, it shouldn't be only restricted to text. It's something that has to be practiced in your day-to-day activities. So only having a text is not going to ensure the quality of work we do. We have to live, or we have to basically apply ourselves, apply those precepts that are in the code of ethics when we do our work. So I'm not trying to preach to you or try to say what should or should not be done, but I'm just trying to show you that under the law, under the statute that governs us as chartered accountants, we are having a professional obligation to ensure that what we do and the objects of the institute are satisfied, and we meet these conditions when we are engaging in our professional activities. We are required to do that by law, the law that governs chartered accountants. So moving on to a practicing accountant. So now practicing accountant is actually recognized in the Act as a special group of people, because according to the Act, a practicing accountant requires a practicing certificate to be issued by the Chartered Institute. So when you're issuing a practicing certificate, there is again a procedure. The council needs to approve a practicing accountant, and also there is a requirement for a certain amount of experience, and apart from the knowledge that has been gathered by way of examination. So therefore, a practicing accountant has been recognized as someone that is that's a subset of chartered accountants who are recognized as practicing accountants. And the obligations of chartered practicing accountants are, of course, more than a normal chartered accountant, because a practicing accountant is holding himself out as an accountant who is willing to provide services at a fee. So therefore, you have the obligations as a chartered accountant, but if you have taken your practicing certificate and you are a practicing accountant, you have another set of added obligations under the Act. So section 24, if you look at section 24, it talks of what it is to be in practice. Now, considering the audience, I felt this was important because I believe you're keen on starting your own practice. So therefore, you need to know the legal background to setting up your practice and then your legal obligations. So a person is deemed to practice as an accountant if in consideration of remuneration received or to be received, and whether by himself or in partnership with any other person as a director of a company, he engages himself in the practice of accountancy or holds himself out to the public as an accountant. Now, this is important. There are several parts in this section that are important for practicing accountants. So here you will see that there is a mention of remuneration received. So you're holding yourself out as providing a certain service with regard to accountancy, and as consideration for that service, you're being paid a remuneration. So therefore, if you are engaged in any activities where you are providing services for a fee, then you're considered to be in practice. And then this section goes on. It's not just accountancy. It also talks about services involving auditing or verification of financial transactions, accounts or records, preparation, verification or certification of financial accounting or related statements. So any services connected with these activities will also be considered as part of a practice. Then professional services or assistance about matters of principle or details relating to accounting procedures or company taxation or business matter or certification of financial facts or data. So therefore, I mean, me being in the field of taxation, I can't as a practicing accountant say, for example, I'm in tax. So my obligation in what I say as a tax professional is less than what you may say as an auditor, because we are whatever services we provide as chartered accountants, maybe accounting, maybe verification, maybe preparation, maybe taxation, anything will constitute being in practice, and therefore one is not less important or more important than the other. Any service you perform will fall within this meaning of practice. So therefore, you have to exercise the same level of diligence in doing whatever services that you provide in your practice. Now, there are certain, I will not go into details about all the lists that were provided as practicing. The definition goes on with regard to practicing, the practice. But then I thought I'll move on with, I'll just highlight the important points. So that's what the previous slide was on. And then I would like to move on. I mean, if you're interested in knowing more about what the meaning of practice and what services are included, and maybe if you want to ask yourself, can I do this and will it still be covered under the law, you can always go to this particular section, section 24, and check it for yourself and inform yourselves about what's included and what's not. But the point I want to make is that by law, whatever service you provide as a chartered accountant, each service is as important than the other. You can't say auditing is more important, tax is more important, or accountancy or systems preparation, all of it is important. Now, when you are in practice as accountants, there are also certain restrictions that the Act has imposed. So the restrictions in acting as practicing as accountants is given in section 21. Now, this is where I mentioned to you that if you are in practice, you require a practicing certificate. So that again is not something I have told you, or it's not something that the institute is telling you. It's something the law is telling us to do. So the practicing certificate is not a requirement because the council wants to do it, or it's not a requirement for good governance. It's basically something that the law tells you to do. And if you don't follow it, then you're in breach of law. So the law tells you that any member of the institute shall practice, so this is a restriction basically. So no person who is a member of the institute shall practice as an accountant unless he is the holder of a certificate to practice, which is for the time being in force. Provided, however, that such certificate to practice shall not be issued to a member of the institute unless such person has at least a period of 2 years practice training in a firm of practicing accountants after he has passed one of the qualifying examinations. So one aspect that I want to highlight here is, yes, you require the practical knowledge in addition to your theory knowledge that you would have acquired in the examination. And the second thing is that there are situations, or there can be situations, where practicing accountants might take it lightly that we need to renew this certificate or renew our membership. So, for example, if I feel now the institute requires us to renew our membership and pay a membership fee each year and be part of this organization. But there can be instances where this will not be considered as important, or someone might think, I have passed my examinations. I have a certificate to say that I have passed my examinations. I have practical experience in working in this place for, say, so many years, and I know what I'm doing. Why is it important that I have to keep paying my membership fee? Why is it important that I have to keep renewing all these documents and sending it to the institute? And why is that important? I can still do, say, my membership lapses today. I can still do my work that I did yesterday as in the same manner that I can do it tomorrow when my membership has lapsed. So why, I mean, work-wise, yes, from a practical point of view, yes. What I did yesterday is the same that I'm going to do tomorrow, but my membership lapsed today. So according to the law, it says that no person shall practice who is a member. So first and foremost, you need to be a member, which means you need to pay your membership fees and you have to renew your membership and you have to continue being a member. And then also you need the practicing certificate to be in force. Now, the legal issue that may come up in this sort of scenario where, say, you have not renewed your membership, or if you have not actually got a practicing certificate, is that at some point, for some reason, your work is questioned and you need to defend yourself and say, no, I am qualified to do this work and I have the necessary certification to do this work. And therefore, I need to be respected, or my opinion of the work I have done needs to be accepted as being done by a professional. You can only defend that if you have a valid membership. So, I mean, if you're, if all goes well, nobody questions you and life goes on, yes, even without a membership, even without paying the fee, or, I mean, life can go on. But if you have an issue, the only way you can defend yourself is to say that here is my certificate, I am a member, and this is my credentials. So therefore, I am having the power to do this work. Because if your work is being questioned even in a court of law, first, if you are being asked to give evidence, the first thing the lawyers will check will be your credentials, and you need to provide your professional qualifications and your registration certifications before you can even give any evidence with regard to the work you do. So first of all, you need to establish that you are empowered or you have the right to give this opinion or the work you have done. So therefore, it's important, don't neglect the communications that are being sent by the institute. Keep your membership up to date, and whatever that requires, the CPD requirements, all of that needs to be considered as important, because that is how we can basically gain respect as chartered accountants and also comply with the law that has given us this status. Now, there is, so that's basically the legal perspective of the profession. and why we are part of, or why the public recognizes us as professionals in accounting, auditing and taxation. And then the second part of my presentation is on professional misconduct. What happens or what is going to be considered as misconduct, and how the law looks at it, and what are the repercussions. Now, when it comes to misconduct, again, there is a section in the law, section 16, which talks about disenrollment or revocation of registration. Now, this section says the council may disenroll any individual who is a member of the institute if satisfied that he is unfit to practice the profession of an accountant and auditor by reason that he has been guilty of professional misconduct. So all of us know, when the police puts their hand up and we don't listen, or if we ignore that, we are going to face consequences. We are going to be charged or fined. Likewise, as chartered accountants, if we are not adhering to the professional standards that are expected from us, and we are engaged in any sort of professional misconduct, the repercussion or consequence is that the council can disenroll any member of the institute. Of course, I'm not going into the mechanics of how this is being done, the ethics committee, how the council will probably ask you to come and give evidence, defend yourself. I mean, that's besides the point. The point I'm trying to make is, don't go there. Avoid professional misconduct rather than, trying to look at the procedure. So now we know how, for us to avoid getting there, we need to know what is professional misconduct. What should I avoid doing? So it's not difficult. Professional misconduct is defined in section 20 of the Act. And it says, for the purposes of this Act, professional misconduct means any act or omission which is for the time being specified in the second schedule to this Act. So if you want to know what is included as professional misconduct, you need to go to the second schedule of this Act. So the second schedule to the Act is a very long schedule. It lists a lot of items, and I'm not going to go through all those items, but I've just picked a few items in the second schedule, which I thought will be interesting for the audience to see. Now, the second schedule is actually having two parts to it. One is for all members, and then there is another section for practicing members. So misconduct by a member is applicable to everyone, whereas misconduct by a practicing accountant is only restricted to those who are having the practicing certificate. So just let's go through some of the items that are given in this list. For members, failing to comply with the Sri Lanka accounting standards and auditing standards. So it's very important that you follow these technical standards. Being grossly negligent in the performance of his professional duty. Now I'll come to what negligence is in more detail in the third part of my presentation, but that's also statutorily given that you can't be negligent. Then failing to keep records of professional advice. So now, especially everything is in soft copy. I can't find the email. I can't find the document. I can't, it's in archives. You can't afford to say that. You are, it's going to be considered as professional misconduct if you have failed to keep records of your professional advice. Then directly or indirectly being party to any act which will bring the institute or the profession into discredit or disrepute. So in whatever you do, you have to be mindful that you don't bring any discredit to the profession. And then publicizing professional services or attainments with a view to securing professional work, unless permitted by the council or specifically requested by a client or prospective client. So publicizing of professional work is also considered as professional misconduct under the statute. So there's a whole heap of things that are included in this list. I just picked a few just to give you a flavor of what is there. But please feel free to go to the second schedule and read out all those for yourself. Then for practicing members, again, there's a separate list. So this has things like owning or being committed to acquire direct material financial interest in a client. So if you buy shares in your client, then accepting appointment as an auditor of a company without first ascertaining that the requirements of the Companies Act from time to time for appointment of auditors have been complied with. So you need to check if you are qualified to be appointed as an auditor according to the Companies Act. Then rendering professional services to an illegal business or activity, except as may be necessary to enable such business or activity, and may be necessary to render financial statements for the state or state agency. So basically providing services to any illegal business is also considered as professional misconduct. Then charging fees contingent upon findings or results. So, I mean, all of us have done this, or all of us know this because in our examinations, we've studied all of this for ethics and things like that. But I'm just bringing it out here to say that the Act recognizes these things as professional misconduct. And why these are important for us to know as professional misconduct is, if we breach these items, we always face the consequences of being disenrolled. Why? Because for professional misconduct, you can be disenrolled. So that's why I'm just bringing it up, but I'm sure all of you know about all this. Paying or receiving a referral fee or commission for a client referred to or by him. So I'm just saying, bringing it up for your knowledge purposes so that you all will be keen to go back to the second schedule and read the other items for yourself as well. So holding clients' assets, failing to keep clients' money in a separate account, failing to deposit clients' money promptly into the client account, drawing on a client's account, all of that will be considered as professional misconduct. And please go to the second schedule of the Act to get the entire list so that you know where you need to draw your line. So the third part of my presentation is on professional negligence. I will just, it's a theoretical area in the sense that it deals a lot with the law and law, common law, things like that. I'm just going to relate it to how it will have an impact on chartered accountants themselves. Now, I did some research to see if there have been any case law on professional negligence for chartered accountants, and thankfully, I didn't come across anything, and I don't think that there have been any cases that have been taken to court on the professional negligence of a chartered accountant. But of course, we need to look at case law with regard to other professional negligence in order for us to determine how we can avoid being accused of professional negligence. Now, first we need to understand why we are being considered as a profession and why we are not a business. Now, if you're starting your own practice, you need to look at that as a profession, not as a trade or business. If you're buying and selling something, you're in a business. But if you have a firm of chartered accountants, you're engaging in a profession. And why is it important for you to distinguish between the two? I mean, why is it distinguished? Why am I not considered as doing a business? Is because a profession consists of a group of persons who are identifiable by reference to some register or record. So a profession has a register where the professionals in that group are recognized as separate group of people. Then a professional is also recognized as having a learning or skill in some field of activity. And that field is something where the public needs protection against incompetence. And there is a standard of skill and learning that is prescribed for the profession. Now, it's easier to understand if you take, for example, a doctor. If the doctor is incompetent, it's a matter of life and death. But we need to also see it from a point of view of a chartered accountant. A chartered accountant will give an audit report saying that a company has no going concern issue. And then someone will look at that report and invest their entire life savings in that company. So if, for example, if by chance, unfortunately, the company goes bankrupt, that individual is going to basically lose his entire life savings. And it might be even a matter of life and death at that point. So therefore, the public needs protection against incompetence. So that is why we need a profession, and that is why chartered accountants are recognized as being as having the skills required to practice in the field of accountancy, auditing, and taxation. Then also a professional is someone who is holding themselves out as being willing to serve the public and also voluntarily submitting themselves to standards of ethical conduct beyond those required by ordinary citizens. So we have voluntarily submitted ourselves saying that we will be governed by our code of ethics, and the code of ethics requires a standard of behavior that is higher than what is required from a normal citizen of the country. And then also our professional will be undertaking to accept personal responsibility to those whom they serve for their actions. So basically, if you are going to start your own profession or start your own practice, remember that it's not a business, but it's a profession. And why I'm saying that is because of these reasons. So when it comes to the profession, then we have to also look at professional negligence. Now, in Sri Lanka, there is no particular statute that governs professional negligence. So therefore, we have to resort to common law. So the common law of our country is the Roman Dutch law. And under the Roman Dutch law, it is the law of delict that will govern professional negligence. So there is some confusion where between law of delict and tort. A lot of people who have studied law in other jurisdictions will be talking of tort, but tort is not our common law because we are Roman Dutch. Our common law is based on Roman Dutch law. The law that governs professional negligence in Sri Lanka is the law of delict. Without going into too much of technical aspects, in the law, a delict is basically a civil wrong as opposed to a criminal or contractual wrong. So all of you know what a criminal or contractual wrong is. So this is neither of those, but it's a civil wrong. And it's basically a breach of a general duty that is imposed by law. The action, if you have broken this law or if you have breached this general duty, is that the person who is injured is entitled to damages. So if you have committed a criminal offense, then you will be fined or you will be imprisoned. If you have committed a contractual breach, then you will be penalized according to the contract that you have entered into. But if you have done something that is a delict, basically, or civil wrong, then the consequence of it is that you have to pay damages to the person to whom you have done that injury or who expected a certain amount of duty from you. So the consequence of doing a civil wrong in delict is that you will have to compensate or pay damages to the person who is suffering because of your not abiding by your civil duty to do this. So when it comes to practice, you have in the Roman Dutch law two main delicts. One is the equilian action and one is the actio injuriarum. So it's basically one is where you have come to come to a position where you are expected to act in a certain manner, and because you haven't acted in that particular manner, you're going to be causing damage to the other person. So that is basically a querent action. And of course, injuriarum is something that talks about reputation. So that is not really something that we need to look at here. But as a practicing accountant, the main area where you can be in negligence is, or where the public is expecting you to have a certain duty towards the public, is basically when you are engaging, or when you are engaging as an auditor and you give an audit opinion. Of course, even when you're providing services in other capacities, if you are giving an opinion, or if you are providing some services, it can cause damage to the public. But there is a large amount of stakeholders involved when it comes to an audit report or an audit opinion. So if, for example, you have not done your duty correctly as an auditor, and because of giving the wrong audit report, there is some damage that has happened to the public, then of course, you will be expected to pay damages if they bring an action under law of delict. Now, when you are being appointed as an auditor, the Companies Act tells you what are the qualifications of being an auditor. So even though the offences are covered under the law of delict, what role the auditor has to play is given by statute. So the statute tells you as an auditor what is expected from you. So that is a statutory obligation. And if you are negligent in doing this, of course, the action can be brought under the law of delict. So what does the Companies Act say? Companies Act says that a person cannot be appointed to act as an auditor unless that person is a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. So clearly, we have been, as a body of professionals, being given the responsibility to act as auditors. So therefore, we have a statutory obligation to provide our services as auditors with due diligence. And then the Act also goes on to say what is to be included in the auditor's report. So here again, this is, to be honest, when we are drafting the auditor's report, or when we are releasing an auditor's report, it's a standard format. We just take, copy paste the report, just change probably the client's name, and then sign it off. It will probably just be a 2-page document. But the opinion that is given in that auditor's opinion, when you sign off, you're basically taking a very big responsibility statutorily, and also as a civil duty that you have as a professional when you're signing off on that audit opinion. So the Companies Act tells us what is to be incorporated in the report. Of course, we just take the format, and all of these points are given in our usual format that has been given. But when you're signing it off, you need to be conscious that you're placing your signature on a document that is your obligation to provide a correct view on the financial statements of the entity that you're certifying. So from an auditor's point of view, we apart from the common law, we also have a statutory obligation to fulfill here. Now, what happens if you're negligent in giving this audit opinion? If you are falling short of the standards of care that law demands from you, then it becomes negligent. So the criteria that the standard of conduct that is required is basically defined in law. Now, we don't have, like I said, the case on professional negligence in the case of chartered accountants, but we have the case of Professor Priyani Soisa versus Regency Kularatna, which is a famous case based on where it defines what is professional negligence. Here it was a doctor. So in that case, usually a person who is rendering a professional service is required to have special skill, knowledge, or capacity of his performance. So when does it go from being exercising your profession to being negligent? How do you cross that line? I mean, where do you draw the line and how do you cross that line? I'm practicing my profession, I'm being negligent. Where is that line? I mean, how can I slip from one to the other? So what you need to ask yourself in deciding whether you're being negligent or not is whether a person in a similar capacity as yourself who is similarly skilled. So you acting as a chartered accountant, you have to also think that any other chartered accountant who is having the same knowledge and experience as you, will that person act in the same way that you're currently acting? If the answer is yes, then you're not negligent. But if the answer is no, then you're being negligent. Now, of course, when we are engaging in our day-to-day activities, we are not going to be asking ourselves this question. Will another chartered accountant do this in the same way? We are not going to ask that. But why we need this is because if your actions or if what you have done is going to be challenged in court, the court will be the deciding factor on this matter. So the court will then look at what you have done, and then it will ask itself, or probably ask a similar professional to come and then give evidence or testify, saying that, okay, this is what I have done, or this is what I would have done in similar circumstances. So that is why this test is important. It's not that you need to ask yourself this all the time, but basically how the court will look at whether you have been negligent or not is they will have this test. Will a person in similar circumstances with similar professional knowledge and skill have done the same thing that you would have done in those circumstances? If a reasonable professional in those circumstances would have acted differently, then your actions might be considered to be negligent. Whereas if another person in your same profession, we would have done the same thing in the same manner, then of course you can justify that no, it was not negligent. So that is what you need to defend. That is what you need to establish, that any professional chartered accountant in the circumstances you're in would have acted in the same way. If you can't prove that, then you're going to be considered as negligent. So what happens if you give an incorrect audit report? So an audit report can be incorrect because it can be prepared negligently, which we just covered. And also it can be incorrect because you have prepared it fraudulently. So of course it can be for either one of those reasons. Negligence, of course, sometimes can be inadvertent, but if you can prove that you have taken all the necessary, performed all the necessary activities to justify that you have used your professional judgment in a prudent manner, then of course you can defend yourself saying it's not negligent. But also the audit report can be incorrect because of fraudulent behavior. That of course is a choice that the professional is going to make. And there again, if that is the case and the matter is taken up in court, what the other side will have to establish is that there was some fraudulent intention or some gain that was intended to be taken by the auditor by giving this incorrect audit report. So my presentation covered mainly negligence, but I just wanted to highlight that it can also be for fraudulent activities as well. So to sum up, the liability of the auditor under the Roman Dutch law with giving incorrect audit report is because of the negligence of the auditor, which you can avoid by establishing that you have done all the test of controls, your procedure, your working papers, the level of due diligence that you have, the diligence you have exercised in checking their financial statements, the work performed, the time spent, the staff involved, their competence levels, all of that can support you to say that you are not negligent. Because all of that, I mean, while doing audit, all of us prepare files, all of us have procedures, and probably when we were trainees, we didn't see, why we had to do that, just ticks everywhere. But the tick is important if you go to court. One single tick can be the deciding factor on whether you have been negligent or not. See, this tick shows us that I have looked at it. I was not negligent. So therefore, as auditors, if you're giving audit reports, and even in any other capacity, if you're providing services, you have to have your procedure in place to make sure that you're not going to be called for negligence by establishing and having those documents in place to say that you have exercised due care in giving that opinion. And of course, fraudulent conduct of the auditor can also have issues. Just to wrap up my presentation, I'd just like to tell you a small story that I read about an auditor. And this is actually something that happened overseas. So there was a shepherd that was looking after his sheep. And then there was this guy who came and said that, if I can tell you how many sheep you have, will you give me one of them? He asked. So the shepherd looks at the man and then looks at his sheep and says, okay, fine. And then the man parks his vehicle, connects to his laptop, fax, mobile, goes to NASA, scans the GPS, opens the database, Excel tables, algorithms, pivot tables, does all that and prints a 150 document report on his printer and tells the shepherd, you have exactly 1,586 sheep. Then the shepherd, surprised, says, that's correct. You can have your sheep back. Sorry, you can have the sheep that I agreed that I'll give you. That the number is correct. So then the man is very happy. He thanks the shepherd for the animal and puts the animal in his vehicle. And then the shepherd asks him, if I guess your profession, will you return my animal back to me? And the man says, yes, of course, why not? And then the shepherd says, you're an auditor. And then the man is again surprised. How did you know that I was an auditor? And then this shepherd answers, very simple. Firstly, you came here without being wanted. Secondly, you charged me a fee to tell me something I already know. And thirdly, you don't understand anything about my business. Now, can I have my dog back? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, thank you very much, Dinusha, for that wonderful and interesting presentation. I think the audience, the participants would have gained knowledge as well as refresh their knowledge about the legal perspective, as well as I think it would have added value to the people who would like to start their own practice as well. We have few questions in our Q&A area. Before that, let me ask one question from my side. This is regarding the practicing certificate, Dinusha. When it comes to the practicing certificate, say, for example, sometimes when it comes to the sole practitioners, they will tend to forget to renew the practicing certificate, right? In that context, say, for example, in that year, he has given the audit report as well. What kind of consequences that the person can face, as well as if anybody get to know about that? Can they file legal action against, on what kind of grounds? Will you be able to explain it more from your side?
Yes, so basically, like I said, if nobody questions this, you're fine. You're not going to have any problem. But if someone questions this and they go to court saying that here I have got an audit report, but the person who signed it doesn't have a practicing certificate, definitely the court will hold against that practicing accountant because you had no authority to sign that document. Because under the statute, it says that someone who is engaging as a practicing accountant has to have a valid certificate. So therefore, the court will definitely say that you had no authority to sign it, and then under statute, you will not be able to actually give that opinion, and therefore you will be in breach. You would have been in breach of the law.
All right, I think if it's so, the people who are going to start their own practice, be mindful, you have to renew your practicing certificate every year. The question from the audience, this is also relating to the practicing certificate, Dimosha. There are instances the people act as honorary auditor, where mostly to the charitable organizations, if it's a school kind of a club or kind of an association, charitable organization, there will be an honorary job chartered accountants do without a fee. In that context, is it required to obtain a practicing certificate for that also?
Yes, so now when it comes to honorary work, it depends on your deliverable. Now, if you're basically doing honorary work for a charitable institution, you're just preparing the accounts, and then you're not holding yourself out as being a chartered accountant in doing that. Now, if you say that, okay, I will be able to help you with your accounts, but you're not doing it because you're a chartered accountant. You're just doing it because probably it's for the goodness of your heart. But if you go and say, yes, I will give you a report on your financial statements, and I'm going to give this because I'm a chartered accountant, and I sign off and hold myself out to be a chartered accountant and show that I'm doing this because I'm a chartered accountant, and also the public who is using those documents have to rely on it. If they are going to make any decisions based on your report, and if they are going to rely on your work, then yes, then you're basically acting as a practicing accountant. So then in that case, the statute will say that, I just showed you what the statute says. So in that case, yes, you will have to have a practicing. But if you're just doing it because not as a chartered accountant, but just as a normal person who is part of that group, then yes, and then people are not relying on your work, then of course it doesn't, it won't require a certification in that case.
All right. The second question is also relating to the practicing certificate. Is it necessary to get the practicing training from an audit firm? How?
That, of course, I think has already been specified by the institute itself. The institute has a guideline when issuing practicing certificates, and there are certain criteria that is required by the member to be fulfilled. So the institute will be the one that will be the judge on that, and you have to establish that you satisfy all those criteria that have been set out by the institute to get the certificate.
All right. Does the act says anything about that? No, right? It says only 2 years.
Yes, act says 2 years in a practicing firm of chartered accountants.
Firm of chartered accountants.
And of course, act says that the council will only issue the certificate. So then, of course, the council is, even with the training, the council will be having the discretion to make that call.
Then we have to adhere to the guidelines issued by the council when giving the practicing certificate in accordance with the act.
Yes. So basically what I'm trying to say is you can't demand it. At the discretion of the council, because section says council will be giving the practicing certificate.
All right. The next question is, in addition to have a practicing certificate, business registration is also required to establish an office. Is it allowed to register the practicing office, that means the audit firm, as partnership with a non-member, whoever non-member will not involve in professional practice and will not sign the audit report, but he will involve only managing the office administration and staff?
Yes, so now the law governing these two aspects are different. Now, practicing certificate is governed by the Chartered Accountants, Institute of Chartered Accountants Act. Business registration is governed by the Business Registration Ordinance. So the Chartered Institute requires you to register as a practicing member, and the Chartered Institute lets you do A, B, and C, as I mentioned in the Act. So if you are going to be involved in providing A, B, C activities as provided in the Act, then yes, you have to have a practicing certificate. But business registration, of course, does not require any such requirement. I mean, anyone can go and get a business registration. There is no requirement to be qualified, or there is no set guideline for that. So business registration, you can go and register with anybody. There is no regulation. So it's basically two separate laws. If you go and do a business registration, it's governed under one law. But if you go and register as a practicing accountant, then the services that are provided under that act will be governed by that act.
Okay. The other question is, if one is pressurized not to give a qualified opinion, will it be classified as negligence?
Well, it's a matter of that question will be subjective to the facts of the case. You can't be taking a general answer to that, because negligence is a matter of fact. It's basically, negligence is something that is based on fact. So of course, being pressurized itself is probably coercion, and you need to be concerned about your relationship, because pressurizing someone to do that is anyway wrong. But whether it's negligent or not is a matter of fact, and it will depend on what you can provide as evidence. So if you have if you can provide that you have exercised your due care, your documentation, all of that, then you can come out of negligence. But you can't give a general answer. It's basically based on the facts.
All right, thanks. We have a few more questions also. Let's quickly run through them. One is, this is relating to the advertisements and the promotion, Dinosha. As chartered accountants, can we advertise, promote our profession for our personal practice, like accounting and tax consultations? Can we do that?
So the Act, like I pointed out in the second schedule, lists certain items as professional misconduct. And in that list, advertising and promoting your services has been listed as a professional misconduct. So therefore, I mean, you can, advertising is very broad. So probably you might not advertise, like you might not have a hoarding on it. But, you know, it can be done in like more simpler ways, or now it's like easier to reach your customers. There are so many channels. So basically, the short answer to that question is that advertising has been listed as a professional misconduct in the Act.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. The next question is, how an auditor's liability of negligence can be mitigated? Any insurance cover can be taken by him to limit the liability?
Yeah, so for the first part of the question, how can you mitigate the liability of negligence? Like I said, maintain your documentation, make sure that all your procedures are well documented. Even a tick, like I said, can be important. Make sure that your files are properly maintained, and all the you have proper quality assurance, and I mean quality of the file is maintained. And then have your teams, have competent teams that are doing the work, because that also can amount to negligence. Because if you have raw juniors doing a large audit, for example, then I mean it might even be amount to negligence, because you were not careful in the staff you allocated to do such a important, or they didn't have the necessary skill to do such a big assignment. So those things are important. And then on the insurance cover, of course, like I said, that's again now say, for example, you're considered to be negligent, and the court convicts you, so you are basically convicted of negligence. You have committed an offense. Insurance cover is something that you will basically take to mitigate your losses. But as a professional, if you are considered negligence, it's a breach of the law governing chartered accountants. Insurance is just how you kind of get money for it. But technically, under the Act, you're in breach.
Yeah, it's kind of a mitigation strategy that the insurance cover, but according to the Act, it's kind of a
Breach, yes.
breach, yeah. Then this is about the non-audit activities, Dinosha. When a person is performing the management consultancy services or the feasibility studies other than the audit, does that require a practicing certificate according to the legal frame?
Yeah, so what is practicing and what is not is, like I said, defined in the Act. So if you, the services, different services, you can call non-audit, you can say accounting, you can say taxation. Likewise, it's difficult to say this is not and this is. So basically what you have to do in deciding whether it is, whether you require a practicing certificate or not, is that you need to go to section 24 of the Act and look at the list of things that are given as practice. So if what you're saying falls under the activities that are given in section 24, then you need a practicing certificate. If you don't fall under those list of activities, then you won't need a practicing certificate.
Okay. The next question is regarding the Registrar of Companies, the certificate for auditor. Is it mandatory to obtain in addition to the CA practicing certificate?
That is, of course, an administrative issue. Now, administratively, the Registrar of Companies requires you to have a certificate from them. So it's their administrative requirement. That government institution has a certain requirement you need to satisfy. But just because we have a practicing certificate doesn't mean you have to register with the Registrar of Companies, to my knowledge. From my knowledge, I believe you only need to register with the Registrar of Companies if you are working with them and you're acting as a company secretary and officer of the company. So it's an administrative requirement rather than being a legal requirement.
Okay. One question, I'm a AZA, but according to CA Sri Lanka, they mention I'm unable to obtain the practicing certificate due to the completion of final article before passing the final one exam. It's a practical difficulty. So let me, how to get a practicing certificate now? With your experience, would you be able to answer that, Dinusha? Or else?
In fact, the institute told me also the same thing when I wanted my practicing certificate. So I just needed to complete my
experiences.
Complete the training, and they'll give it to you.
I think the person may, if that person can join maybe audit firm again and complete the training, after that can take the practicing certificate.
Law is not going to help you. Just
it's how the institute. But 2 years, Act says it's 2 years, but after completing, it's kind of a guidelines issued by the Institute of Chartered Accountants. No?
Yes.
All right.
And I mean, I having faced that, I appreciate that they are doing it, because like I said, we are all going to be considered as chartered accountants, and what we do, each one of us will do, has an impact on all the rest of us. So therefore, I'm happy that they are maintaining those high standards, because we need everyone to be acting with the same amount of professionalism and knowledge and technical expertise.
Okay, the final question, can CA be a secretary who is not a practitioner?
Can a
CA chartered accountant be a secretary who is not a practitioner? Practitioner.
So basically, what you're saying is, can I get a registration from the Registrar of Companies without being a practicing member? Yes, it's possible.
It's possible.
Yes.
without taking the practicing certificate from the institute, that the chartered accountant can practice as a secretary.
Yes, I mean, according to my knowledge, maybe this was maybe about 5-6 years ago, it was possible, but unless it has changed now, from my knowledge, yes. But you'll have to check with the Registrar of Companies.
Okay. We have completed all the, no, one more question, it seems. Is it mandatory to have a professional indemnity insurance as a practicing accountant in Sri Lanka?
No, it's not a legal requirement. It's only by choice.
It's kind of a mitigating strategy of you or the firm.
Yes, that's right.
Risk mitigation, but according to the Act, there's no kind of a requirement in Sri Lanka also.
Not
right.
Really.
We have come to the end of the questions. One person is requesting slides from you, Dinusha. You may talk to the institute administration, and if
yes, I'll make it available to the institute.
All right. All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Dinusha. You have taken a lot of questions also. Thank you very much for sharing your experience and your knowledge also with our audience who would like to start their own practice. We also will be happy one day if they are doing good after starting their businesses. Thank you very much for that contribution. And I would like to thank our audience also. Thank you very much for being with us in this 13th webinar in this series. We have a few more webinars also in this series. We are looking forward to see you there as well. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.